Hi, welcome. My name is McCluskey, and on this video I'm going to be taking a few minutes to talk about how to use the leash effectively. I'm going to discuss some issues here with getting really good with the leash so that you're able to create meaningful change with your dog. Now, the leash itself, again, it's a communication tool. It's an extension of how you think. It manifests relationally to create change with your dog through changing how your dog thinks and perceives at that level. Now here, while we look at the leash as a leash, dogs really, they go beyond that. It's almost like it fades out. That's how you want to think of the leash as you use this. It basically is an extension of you. So therefore, everything that follows how you think really filters through that way, through how it sets up. Now here, when I'm using the leash, you'll see here, I'm using a fairly thin leash. I'm using a leather leash. It can be a nylon leash, but again, you do want to use a very thin leash because it helps to promote good communication and control. It's just easier to manipulate and use, whereas if you have a really thick leash, very awkward and bulky, it can make it a lot more difficult as a tool. So here, really good thin leash. Now here, when I'm using the leash, again, I'm just wrapping it up in my hand and keeping it fairly short. Now here, this video here, I want to talk a little bit more. Another video, I talk about I am talking about the leash thickness and leash length and all that. Here, I want to get into a little bit more detail about the actual, when you're using it as a effective tool, to make sure that you're really aware of the actual connection point, the length of leash at certain times, so that you're able to really create good change while avoiding sometimes even getting bitten by dogs, especially if you're a trainer. And I'll talk a little bit more about this on this video here about how that kind of sets in motion. But if you're the owner using the leash and the dog already has power control over you, you have a huge advantage because the dog isn't going to be as challenging because they think that they're in control. And so therefore, this is why it's really helpful to really coach people more so than sometimes the trainer stepping into that role, because again, that's where people see trainers get bitten. And so it's all about avoiding that. If you can do things smart, that's the best way to really approach training. But here, again, getting back to the leash as a tool, when you're using it, again, it doesn't matter what side. Just understand, I ask people all the time to pick the side, but you want to use your strong side. So if you walk your dog on the left side, then stick to that side at least for quite a while until you really create a good level of change. You want to work off your strengths, not your weaknesses. If your spouse say uses, or the person in your family uses a different side, that's okay. They want to work off their strong side too. Just understand, it's not going to confuse the dog. The dog's going to fall right into line. In fact, what matters is about how people think. It's about leadership. But here again, when you're using leash, you want to keep it kind of wrapped up, make it kind of a donut hole, but you want to be able to transfer it back and forth fairly easily at times. You don't want to have it tightly wrapped up in your hand so that you can't move it from hand to hand, because there's times that, if you watch my method, that when you're putting the dog into the sit position, okay, you're building off the basic relational changing script, and say the dog is on my left side, I want my left hand free and clear so I can fully engage the dog, okay, whereas if I try to keep the leash in my left hand, then I'm reaching across, and that just throws everything off. It's not naturalistic, it's awkward, and that's going to affect how I think. So therefore, there's times when you see me using the leash method, even though at first it may seem kind of awkward, okay, moving the leash into, say, my right hand and the dog's on my left side, so my hand is over here a little bit, but it allows me to fully engage with my left hand, and it actually is really helpful, and it does become more natural as you do it, okay, so, but you do at times want to transfer the leash over into the opposite hand when you're putting the dog into the sit position, or you're using the push-pull method, okay, to create a follower moment. And then, once I'm into finishing off most of that sequence at one, it's like 1, 2, 3, and now back into these little heys, little taps with the leash. Then the leash can go back into my left hand, and that's when I can create these little nudges. Now, one key point here to mention, when you're doing the push-pull, you want to make sure the push-pull is pretty assertive, because that's like a set point. That's like a cornerstone. It allows the dog to go into a better follower state, so then it allows me to transfer the leash back into my left hand, and the dog isn't going to be so aware or reactive, and then I can start to create my little follower moments. Okay, so really good push-pull off that. But again, also getting back to this issue of leash length, there is a ideal length that typically you want to work off of, and if you're if you're watching along my videos, you'll see that when I'm holding the leash, and where the actual hook piece here hooks onto the collar, okay, there's about a inch and a half length from the hook and with the leash itself. So my fingers are kind of up here a little bit, but you definitely need to keep it shorter, okay? Rather too short, okay, than too much leash length, especially at first, because what happens is the dog's going to take advantage of that, okay? Especially when you're doing the scripting, especially when you're doing the basic sequencing, you want to keep the leash length fairly short, about an inch and a half, because kinetically, okay, that's ideal. You don't have to move your hand very much. Whereas if I have a lot of leash length, I have to move my hand, more, and it's going to throw everything off. Okay, so it's about communication, and then the dog can take advantage of that, say extra 2 or 3 inches of leash length, and it's going to make the scripting more difficult. So you definitely want to be keeping the leash length definitely shorter. However, just be aware, as I want to mention, there's times, okay, that the leash will come out a little bit depending on the dog's state of mind, the level of challenge. But that's being intentional. Just understand, it's being intentional about being aware of when to allow that length of leash to come out. Whereas, so you really, for the most part, want to keep it fairly short. So kinetically, you're able to, the communication level is going to be very level. Okay, it's gonna. So therefore, I barely have to move my hand. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, and even when I'm transferring the hand over, keep that. The leash length will have to come out a little more. Okay, because I'm moving my hand over. So, but just be always aware that it's got to be somewhat, fairly short. Okay, it's got to follow a path of effective communication. So therefore, you want to make sure that if I transfer my hand over, don't have too much leash length. That's one of the really, it's a common mistake that a lot of people make when they're first using the leash is adjusting it and stuff and really allowing too much of this to come out at times. So, but you really want to try to get really good with the leash to make sure you have good communication, but being very intentional about the length of the leash at times. The other issue here too is, when you get into this challenge state with dogs, when they're challenging, that's when, in fact, you actually will have the leash go out more. Okay, so you'll see that the dog is really coming up into the air and twisting around and circling around. Okay, this is where the leash length will adjust, but again, it's being intentional about that. When I feel that level of challenge coming on, and I know that, I can't use the basic script. It's too challenging for the dog. The dog is very, very much into a reactive challenge state. Then I will be, again, being intentional, let this leash length to come out, but as a kinetic tool. Okay, when it comes out, it means that it comes out only, again, so far, to keep the dog within the staging area. Okay, now, again, this is one of these things about kinetics, is that if it comes out too far, okay, especially if I'm dealing, say, with an aggressive dog, now, again, very much, understanding the dynamics in play, I really am looking hard to assess whether or not I should be handling that dog during the first session or two, whether it's better to coach the person, and therefore it's less challenging because the dog thinks they have, and they do, have control over that owner. So the dog is going to be less challenging. But if I take that leash and step right into that role, just understand, I could be in a mess, okay? I could, and it's happened a couple times to me, but this is the thing. Because I'm intentional about how I'm using the leash length and using it properly as a kinetic tool, it avoided me getting bitten, okay? Because I was able to control that level of challenge. So the dog's coming up on me, you're trying to get me, you're trying to bite me, I'm able to redirect that just away and then circle that around, and then from there make a decision. I'm going to give the dog back to the owner because the dog gets power back and decreases that, or depending on that level of challenge, I'm able to manipulate the dog's movements and state of mind and build off that script. But again, very important to understand that kinetically, even when the dog is going into a challenged state, you don't want too much, you don't want too little, because again, if there's not enough going out, that dog can get up on me, okay? You need to keep it just at the right length, and here the right length here is about 8 inches, okay? It could be a little less than that, okay? It's about 6 to 8 inches. Because again, this length here allows me to redirect, but I have ideal control based on the leash length, okay? So it gives me that ability to keep, the dog's challenge off me, but be able to circle that around. So really, it's very effective. So it's all about energy through this leash, how to use this leash effectively. It's a big deal. So you really want to get really, really good with the leash. Again, the leash is just a tool. Again, it's not meant to be in some people's hands. It's nothing more than a anchor point. I mean, it's nothing. But when it's in the right hands, it's a very, very effective role-changing tool. Especially if you really get into this thing about kinetics, state of mind, language that you speak through the leash. Okay, it is about language. It's unspoken language, but it's language. It's not verbal language. It's language the dog understands. It's about what's reasonable. It's about relational influence. I talk about that in my other video. So anyway, if you have any questions about the leash, about how to use it effectively, or if you need help with your dog, feel free to contact me anytime. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thanks for watching.